Hello, friends. We're back again. It's Fightful Overbooked, and we're here to talk about the news you didn't see all week. Because Jeremy Lambert, there was only one story in the entire news cycle.
Queen Elizabeth is died, Joel. It's very sad. I mean, it's not like whatever. It's sad, I guess, in a way.
All hail Queen Zelina?
Yeah, where's she been?
That's for her to tell us when she's ready. It's newsworthy. We have an entire week of stories that normally I'd say top 5 stories that came across your news feed or didn't. In this case, they probably all didn't because everyone was talking about a guy having a sugar rush and yelling at people. So instead, we have 5 really interesting articles to talk about. Do we have anything to touch on at the beginning of this whole thing, Jeremy?
This was a tough week to sort of pick articles. Usually I like to go more under the radar stuff of like, hey, and maybe you didn't hear about this one. I like to put over some podcasts and some interviews that maybe other people have not heard of or other people have not checked out. And this week it was difficult to do that because nobody's really doing interviews this week. So it was tough to find that sort of under the radar stuff. And I mean, there was some stuff out there, and I will fully admit maybe I didn't do a good enough job of covering some of the lesser known stuff that was out there. But when a big story like this happens, there ain't a lot going on elsewhere. Everybody's just kind of waiting on pins and needles, and not many people are going to say many things if they are tied to certain companies, or if they're not tied to companies, they still aren't going to say a whole lot about a whole lot. So yeah, it was a tough week in coming up with like, hey, check out this thing that you may have really missed, that not only this week, but you may have never heard of this thing. I feel like everything this week is like, you've heard of these people, you've probably heard of these podcasts, but these are interesting stories that you may have missed because a lot of people missed stuff this week.
Well, I can tell you someone who definitely didn't mince words and definitely had stuff to say, and that is our good pal, our best friend, our number 5 at the Denny's lineup for an early Grand Slam, Bobby Fish. Bobby Fish says CM Punk was a cunt after their match, thinks Punk's MMA offense is insulting. Bobby Fish sitting down with Steve Fall from 10 Cal Podcast, by the way, sporting a brand new look that seemed to have shocked quite a few people.
Man,
Gone is the mustache and the long beard. Oh, there's something going on there.
Like, I know we'd like to do Bobby Fish's old jokes, but
he's leading into the bit now.
Yeah, like he's looking a little rough, man. Because like I've covered some Bobby Fish stuff, but I've never seen him on camera. It's all been audio form. This is the first time I saw him like on camera, and I'm like, oh man, Bobby really has aged in these last few months since he's been off television. So it was weird to see him like that. I didn't think it was Bobby Fish at first. I was like, this is an imposter. Where is my mustached Bobby Fish? But it's him, and you know it's him by the words he was saying. Yeah, he is leaning into the bit. You're right about that. It was Bobby Fish though. He had plenty to say about old Mr. Punk. I'm gonna rewind it right fast because on his podcast after the AEW All Out stuff, he commented on that, and he essentially challenged CM Punk to a fight. He said it was an invitation because he understands Punk probably isn't going to show up, but he challenged Punk to a fight. And then he didn't really get into it much on his podcast. He just, criticized his kicks. Bless Bobby Fish, who, if you throw a bad kick around Bobby Fish, he'd fucking tear me up because I can't throw a kick, but I like to claim that I can throw a kick. He destroyed me. Yeah, he made fun of his kicks, but he sent him an invitation. And then in this interview with Steve Fall of NBC Sports Boston, he explained why he doesn't like CM Punk too much. And it is his shitty kicks, his shitty MMA offense in general. They had a match in October that people, I'm sure, saw. If you didn't see, it was a match. But the big talking point coming out of that match, if there was one, I think people just kind of forgot until Bobby Fish drudged everything back up recently, was Fish basically kicked out on like 3.01 on the go to sleep on the finish. And after the match, Punk was not happy about it, apparently. I wasn't happy about something. Fish said like something happened in the match that was Punk's fault, and maybe that's what led to Fish doing that. And then after the match, Punk wasn't happy, I assume, about that. But regardless, there was unhappiness. CM Punk was a cunt, according to Bobby Fish. And Bobby Fish still wants to fight him. And then he buried him for using Kenta's finisher, which is a long rivalry of between those two men. Yeah, Bobby Fish does not like CM Punk or his shitty MMA offense.
How far are we from Bobby Fish's Bloodsport, Jeremy?
Oh, man. It's going to be great. Did he do Bloodsport? I legitimately can't remember. I don't think he did he?
I don't think he ever had a chance because it came around while he was still working with NXT and Ring of Honor and all that.
I couldn't recall I couldn't recall if he did it when then that brief period between WWE and AEW. I couldn't remember if GCW ran like a collective or Josh Barnett ran a Bloodsport. Sometimes they run in October. I at least know one has run in October. I imagine Bobby Sport is going to be a Bloodsport this upcoming year at WrestleMania. If he's not, then he either doesn't want to do it or Josh Barnett lost his number or something happened because he should do it. This is Bobby Fish's forte.
I don't think he can lose Bobby Fish's number because like Bobby Fish's number is 7. Yes.
Jokes. Killing my man Bobby Fish over here.
He's killed himself by the way he looks right now. Anyway, let's move on to number 4. Ronda Rousey feels her input with her character matters more than ever in WWE. She was on her gaming stream. It seems like those are back with the WWE wrestlers, which is great. We've talked about that in the past. But talk to me. Ronda Rousey talking about her character. We've seen quite a marked improvement in the way she's being portrayed and the way that she's even talking on the mic.
So the real news here is that Ronda is on YouTube and not Facebook anymore for her gaming streams. That's the big news out of this. And I've talked about this before, but like covering gaming streams, sometimes wrestlers don't get into it, get into wrestling and all that stuff. Sometimes they just want to play games. And Rousey, for the most part, sticks to games. But if you send donations, send chats, now that she's on YouTube, it's super chats. If you do that, she'll answer your questions. And someone did ask, like, hey, do you have more input on the character? And she's like, yeah, like it feels more like a team and everything. And I think it confirms what we've all kind of seen on screen with her. But I think the interesting aspect with her is we kind of figured that might be the case already because she's Ronda Rousey. But then of course she comes back and she thinks she's going to be a heel and she's a baby face. And now it's like, oh, now whatever I want to do, I kind of want to do. And Becky Lynch said the same thing in an interview this week with Ryan Satin of, I talked to Triple H and he's like, well, we're swimming upstream with you as a heel. So let's go babyface. Unfortunately, she got hurt. So you're seeing a lot of these people in high positions of power, like Becky and Ronda, 2 biggest female stars they have, I would say. And, you would think they already have a little bit of say. And we've seen in the past regime, even if you would think that they didn't from their past character, and they've even said as much. And now we're saying, hey, these top people all the way down, they're getting more input with these things. And I think it's a good thing. And yeah, when it comes to Rousey's gaming stream, I'm going to have to watch these things now because she's going to say some shit.
It feels like Ronda Rousey, along with a lot of other WWE wrestlers, are starting to see that they've eased up a little bit. It almost felt like that tense nature of going out there and performing for really one person. They've become more relaxed. They've started to maybe understand and become more collaborative with their character. And as a result, it's changed the way in which they emote when they're out in front of the crowd or when they're in a match, things like that. And I think it's wonderful. And if someone like Ronda Rousey, who will make money for this company, is excelling with a character refresh or just feeling more like herself, that's huge. That's a big opportunity to work with moving forward for WWE.
And I will put Ronda Rousey over in saying this. I think her gaming streams, even though I'm listening for like news coming out, like any quotes, anything like that from her, I think she does a good job on the gaming streams. Like if you're just a casual who likes to watch people like play video games and stuff, like she does a good job. She's very interactive with the audience and she's into the game. And I just think she does good. So shout out to Ronda Rousey and her gaming streams. I still can't believe they had her get pinned by Lacey Evans last night on SmackDown. That was a shocker to me, Joel Pearl.
Not to me. I've been telling y'all for months. It's time for Lacey Evans, SmackDown Women's Champion. Which she's going to be when everyone comes back after Crown Jewel and see. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we'll see. Number 3, Chris Jericho says Jake Hager has signed a contract extension with AEW. My God, these two are the Toxic Twins, and I'm sure they would love to hear it because no. Do you know who the Toxic Twins are?
No idea.
So that's Steven Tyler and Joe Perry. They called themselves the Toxic Twins because they were so hepped up on everything when they were on tour and still are. So they call themselves the Toxic Twins. Very, very popular, very successful. I think Jericho thinks that Hager is his Toxic Twin because anywhere you go, those two are like tight as nails and they are just best friends. It's kind of ridiculous, but yeah, there you go. Jericho dropping some contract extension news for us here.
I thought you were going somewhere else with the Toxic Twins. I apologize to Aerosmith. I didn't know that one. Beyonce might kick my ass for that one. She's like, you don't know about all this stuff? Like, no, I don't. Sorry. Who are the Beatles? John, Paul, Ringo, and Tommy. Those are the Beatles, right? Pretty sure those are their names.
You and my wife are going to get along great.
As far as Jericho goes, so Jericho is funny in that. Yeah, he just says this because Alex McCarthy, this is the Alex McCarthy, our pal, Alex McCarthy of Inside the Ropes, and he asked about 2.0 signing the contract extension, which Fightful Select first reported. And he's like, oh yeah, Jake Hager too. Like he signed a deal. Just dropping it randomly. What kills me about Jericho is he initially broke that 2.0 signed with AEW back after their like first appearance on Talk is Jericho. He's like, oh yeah, 2.0, they came to my house. They've signed with AEW now. And this was before they got the graphic and all of this stuff. He's like, yeah, they just signed with AEW. Jericho is just not afraid to say these things. And it just pops me tremendously. He spoiled the results on Dynamite, which was great. Jericho just like speaks. And I understand why some people might be like, oh, fuck, Chris Jericho is speaking. But me, as someone who works in news and writes news, I love that Chris Jericho
You're like, speaks. Oh, fuck, Chris Jericho speaking.
Yeah, he's like, because Jericho, he'll not only give me like a good headline, like the NXT sucks, like Tony Khan has more money, like Triple H is moving the goalpost. That was all just one quote right there. Like he'll not only give me just like good headline material, that he will give news when he speaks on stuff. So I love Chris Jericho when he does all of these interviews and everything. Bless that man.
He knows how to do this because he has a background in communications. Like he's told the story multiple times. Like that was his fallback, was going to school for communications, for journalism. And so as a result, like it's helped him in his podcasting career. It's helped him in his music career. It's clearly helped him in his wrestling career. Jericho, like, listen, I give as much shit to him as anyone imaginable, but honest to God, he's always entertaining and he's always giving you something. Good or bad, doesn't matter. But I just love that it's Jake Hager that he goes to bat for every time. I don't get it. Jake Hager either has something on him or like I know he tells he saved my life in the Middle East story, but like there's more to it than that. There has to be. Someone did something.
Find you a friend the way that Chris Jericho and Jake Hager are friends. Okay, we should all be so lucky. That's all I'm saying. Don't hate friendship, Joel Pearl. I feel like you're hating on friendship.
Can you think of a friendship in celebrity culture? And I'm sure someone in the comments will tell us that's so akin to Jericho and Hager, where it's like the superstar and the underling, but they're like very much best friends. Can anyone think of? Can you think of someone like that? I know it exists. I'm sure there.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I like Adam Sandler and Rob Schneider.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's the first thing I could think of there. I'm sure there's like plenty of them, but that's what I'm going with.
Drop it in the comments along with your thumbs up for the video. Let's move on. Number 2, Seth Rollins details real issues with Matt Riddle. Doesn't believe anything is off limits in promos. Seth Rollins sat down with Ariel Helwani, who had also recently sat down with Triple H. A good little 15-minute interview with Mr. Rollins, who had plenty to say, including this. And after that episode of Monday Night Raw, where they kind of went in on each other, this was a good little headline for you. Go ahead, talk about it.
You know who wishes they bet they had a retake? Joe Pearl. Maybe they don't.
I'm sure they're totally fine with it. They did good.
I'm sure they actually are. Yeah.
Ain't no one running into their press scrums and talking about going into business for themselves there.
So this came out like before everything that went down on the weekend, and it was timely because of what Rollins had said on Monday, and then we talked about that a little bit last week. The bitch ass comments, which popped me because it was the John Jones Daniel Cormier take, and so Helwani, of course, being an MMA guy, asked about it. And Rollins, we knew about the heat between Rollins and Riddle. That's a long-standing story. Obviously, they're past it if they're working together. It wasn't a work at the time. Did they later down the line make some money off of it? Yes, that happens in wrestling. It might happen in wrestling a few years from now. Does not mean it's a work right now. All right, folks. But Rollins gets into this, and then he says that, I don't think anything is off limits on the promos. He doesn't exactly clarify if this was cleared. I always just think oh, they're fine with it. It's cleared type of deal. Or if they didn't want it said, then the other person would say, hey, don't say this. I don't think anybody goes out there and just has a gentleman's agreement of I'm going to say whatever I want. You can't get mad at it. And that be that. And I think there is, if Rollins didn't want something said, he would be like, hey, don't say this. But it's always interesting to me to hear people's perspectives on what is an off limit and isn't off limits on promos. And Rollins mentions John Cena of nothing's off limits. You got to have thick skin in this. You can say whatever you want. And the easy stuff with Rollins is bringing up Becky and everything. I'm sure there's easier material that is probably off limits for Rollins.
I can think of literally one thing that nobody ever thinks about anymore when it comes to Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
And, we'll just leave it at that.
I don't think anybody's going to mention that in a promo because it's probably off limits. And whether Rollins has said that, told everybody that, or whether it's just hey, don't do it, then everyone just kind of gets it. But yeah, hearing wrestlers talk about what is and isn't off limits in promos, I find that fascinating because, as we've seen, some people have had issues with what is being said in unscripted promos. Either it wasn't cleared beforehand or wasn't made clear beforehand what should and shouldn't be said. And then other people are just say what you want and, I'll clear it or I won't clear it, but this is what we're doing here. So I thought Rollins had a good take on this. And again, he said from John Cena, he's have thick skin. Whatever is said is kind of fair game. And then off screen, you just gotta let it go. If there might be an issue with something, there are professional ways to address it. And I think Seth Rollins has addressed things in professional ways when it came to Riddle. Not that Riddle said anything on screen at the time that he had an issue with, but there were obviously issues off screen that there were issues with, and they settled it behind closed doors, or not behind closed doors, but they settled it off screen. And Rollins made the point here, I'm a professional. I get the job done. If red lights on, we're in front of a crowd. This is what we're doing. Backstage, different situation. We might not hang out and everything, but we'll be fine. We'll just avoid each other, go about our business. On screen, let's make some money together. Seth Rollins. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I will say this about Seth Rollins. I won't say a bad word about Seth Rollins for as long as I don't have to say a bad word about Seth Rollins.
Did you watch the post-show press conference for Clash of the Castle?
See, that's where
that's the only time. That's the only time where Seth suddenly just broke character because someone made fun of him wearing a jacket with hearts all over it. And they said, you dressed like this is mocking the business. And Seth just tore into the guy. He was just I come to work, I live, sleep, I breathe pro wrestling, outside of the time where I'm spending it with my daughter or I'm sleeping. He went all in and was just don't you dare talk to me about my style choices being the reason I'm not serious enough in pro wrestling. That's the only thing he went off script for. Everything else, he was just doing his ha 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 and all that shit.
You know what he should have done is he should have been on
sugar high guy with some. Anyway,
anybody here fancy themselves as a fashion experts.
Fashion plate.
Yeah.
You just got Cher Delaware standing in the back being like,
Oh, you fancy yourself as a fashion expert? Like, what'd you do in a past life, Cher Delaware? What'd you do in the past?
Did you walk New York Fashion Week with Naomi and Sasha Banks?
Who'd you walk New York Fashion Week with, Cher Delaware? It's like, let me tell you about Mercedes. Okay? Let me tell you about Mercedes out here, Cher. That's what Seth Rollins should have done. Honestly, what should have happened at the other press conference is CM Punk should have just sat there, just been and said nothing, just be like, acknowledge that I'm the best in the world.
Yes.
And then John Alba should have cowardly just acknowledged him, and then CM Punk should have just walked off and would have saved everybody a lot of hassle there. Roman had it down. WWE understands how to do these press conferences. Get everybody in character. Give nothing of insight. Have Triple H give some like cliche answers and give a little bit of news. You know, if I got 37 minutes, Joel,
all
this press conference was 37 minutes.
It was all they needed, and it was perfect. And I sat there, I'm like, wow, it looks better. It is produced better than most press conferences. And no, that wasn't a direct shot at AEW, because I've seen other press conferences look dull. But no, WWE, they juiced it up. They had talent there. They made it what it is. And all the people who were sitting there, they all knew what this was. And it was fine. It was fine. We're all going to live. It's just pro wrestling. Should we get to number one?
Ronda Rousey says she's injured when Ronda comes, or Charlotte Flair says she's injured. When Charlotte comes back, she can lose to me. When she says she's not injured,
when she says she's not injured,
lose to me.
That's right.
That's what
could you imagine that happening
at the press conference?
God, could you imagine that happening in WWE? That'd be just phenomenal stuff. AJ Styles says he's not a flat earther. Anyway, number one.
Wow.
I don't know. I just went to the first thing. I said phenomenal. So here we go. All right. Number one, Matt Hardy thinks Tony Khan reshuffled the deck well with AEW Dynamite, and he praises Hangman Page. You and I have obviously talked about how this entire week is very much all about what happened after the AEW All Out pay-per-view and at the media scrum with Punk and the Elite and all the stories that have come since. So this has to be number one, because the episode of Dynamite that proceeded on Wednesday was much stronger than personally I've seen in a while, and really a return to form for them, and a good launching point from what happened on Sunday.
I had issues with it.
Whatever. That's MJF is so great. I know you. I watched you on the Spotlight Thursdays on YouTube.com/Fightful at 9:30 in the morning. You talked about it.
I didn't say shit on that show. Steven Jensen was going
off.
But
you talked about the MJF stuff. You specifically talked about what you didn't enjoy. So you're not totally off the hook. But yeah, Steven Jensen was in rare form for that show. Shout out to Mr. Jensen. Yes.
Steven Jensen's always great, but man, I just let him go on that. Was Tony Khan just like,
you know what it was? Yeah. In the middle of that whole tirade, that CM Punkian tirade that Steven Jensen went on, I said to myself, you read the Snowden article, didn't you? You read the J.E. Snowden article. I know where this is coming from. But anyway, let's talk about Matt Hardy. Let's talk about him praising Hangman Page. What'd you think of this?
So this was with the great John Alba on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy that he does every single week with John Alba on ad-free shows and just, the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy feed. It's interesting because it's really the first comments, as far as I know, from anybody in AEW about this. And look, Matt didn't really say fuck about shit, in the words of Pat McAfee. He didn't say much. He just said, like, when it came to like All Out and the press conference and the altercation, he's like, yeah, it caught us off guard. What more can you say? There's been a million shows that have explained why they're not going to say that much now and maybe ever. And I don't know if Matt was there at the show in general. I don't know if he was there by the time the altercation occurred. I have no idea. But the fact that Matt still did the podcast, the fact that Alba understood that, like, you can probably only say what you can say, but let me try to see what you will say. And then Matt just said, like, yeah, caught us off guard. And then he praised Tony Khan for reshuffling. And I don't disagree with that. And then when it came to his Hangman Page stuff, I don't want to read too much into the comments about Hangman. He was just talking about Dynamite in general. He talked about Garcia. He like put over the Acclaimed for their all out performance and everything. So he was kind of like talking about AEW in general, but he did single out Hangman because the Danielson match was brought up, and he did single out Hangman of saying, and Alba did sort of as well, of like, yeah, I really like Hangman, like just also a great human being. And I thought that was maybe a direct result of everything CM Punk had to say, because Hangman is the only person who is on television from all of this. So that could just be me reading into things about why he did that. I just thought it was nice to say him saying something nice about Hangman. Anyway, they've worked together in the past, so he has some type of relationship with Hangman personally and professionally. So yeah, Matt, first person to really kind of comment on anything, and he gave you about what you would sort of expect from it. But good on Matt Hardy for saying anything in this spot, because I'm pretty sure he could have easily just been like, we ain't talking about this on the show. Let's just get into, I think their topic this week was WW ECW. So they could have just skipped right over everything and gone right into that. And they didn't. They addressed what they could.
Feels like Matt Hardy is consistently on the cusp of just, he's very open to talk about these things. How he discusses it is completely whatever. It's subjective. But the fact that he's willing to do it, it's really a testament. Like if you look at not just his podcast, but just his past in wrestling, he's been very willing to just talk about it, whatever it is. And this was certainly one of those times. So like you said, it was nice that they wanted to do it, and they didn't have to, but give a couple of thoughts. Didn't say anything groundbreaking. It didn't say anything that was upsetting either. Just kind of said, we move on.
I think Matt Hardy, I don't know Matt. I've met Matt in passing. I've never spoken with Matt. I find Matt Hardy to be one of the more genuine people when it comes to podcasting and interviews and everything. I always find his the podcast with Alba very interesting because Matt isn't afraid to address these things. And I'll say this about Matt as well, of when we did the movie review shows, I would always tag the wrestler of hey, we're going to talk about your this movie that you were in. You want to come on and talk about it with us? And of course, nobody ever messaged me back to be on the show. And Matt actually did reach out to me and was hey, I didn't really, he had thoughts about his experience on the movie and he just didn't want to address them in detail. And I respected that. But the fact that he even took time to reach out to say that, this was years ago too. So I don't feel I'm very prominent anyway, but the fact that he did that when I was even less prominent and Fightful was less prominent, that says something about, I think, the character of Matt Hardy. So I always found him to be very personable and genuine when he does these interviews and these podcasts. And he streams on Twitch. I think he still does that. So when he does that, I find him to be personable and genuine on that stuff. So shout out to Matt Hardy.
I mean, you kind of have to be if you're living in a farm in a city of 200 people and all is
where the internet sucks. Sean Ross Sapp has buried Matt's internet a million times. Right. That's not a new story. So
and where your family is literally 10% of the entire population of this town you're living in. I get it. Matt's just looking for a friend, Jeremy Lambert. He's just looking.
We can be friends, Matt. We're two North Carolina boys. I mean, I used to be there, but yeah, we're North Carolina boys. I like Matt. I think Matt's cool. I would be Matt Hardy's friend. I don't know if he'd be my friend, but I would be Matt Hardy's friend.
They call you North Carolinians.
Dude, I guess so. I'm an Ohioan now, unfortunately.
Ohio.
OH.
That's all I got.
OH.
I'm not doing this. Jesse the Buckeye can follow up on that, as she will. Right? She would just be great to host this show with me.
Yeah, I should hire her and fire you. I've been trying to fire you for a long time anyway, but now if I have an actual replacement, it makes it a little bit easier.
It does. So see you in a month.
This is Joel's last show. Jesse the Buckeye will be the host next week. And yeah, great. That's my birthday wish.
Good stuff. Newsworthy with Jesse and Jeremy. It sounds better than Joel and Jeremy, so I get it. Let's get out of here. Jeremy Lambert, plug the stuff and let's go.
I don't know. Follow me on Twitter if you want, at Jeremy Lambert 88. All my stuff is there. Joel, I don't want to put myself over too much, but that's what I do on this show. I was fucking on fire on Twitter this week. I was raining them down. Just half court stuff, didn't matter. Heat checks all day. I was on fire this week. I'm not afraid to say that. So follow me on Twitter if you would like. Go to Fightful Overbooked. We got old stuff. We got new stuff. Steven Jensen and SP3, the lads are back. They were talking about Nickelodeon TV shows this week. Everybody can watch that. We have Tag Talk. They did a special episode essentially coming out of All Out, and then they'll be back on Sunday with everything. You can watch Tim and Joel Pod live Sundays at noon Eastern here on Fightful Overbooked. And yeah, a lot of stuff happening this week on Fightful Overbooked. This past week we did a lot of new stuff and more stuff coming. So
a little birdie,
everybody.
A little birdie told me a new episode of Strong Style with Cher Delaware is also
dropping.
Well. Yes,
I've heard this as well.
Keep your eyes peeled. I am at Joel Pearl, JoelPearl. Ladies, gentlemen, friends beyond the binary. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.